Well, welcome back to day 4 of our 8 days through the book of 2 Kings. I'm away with one of my daughters, which explains the probably much appreciated change of scenery behind me. Nevertheless, today we read 2 Kings chapters 11 to 13. Started off by looking at the tyrannical rule of Athaliah, who had murdered all of the royal heirs so that she could reign. And then the amazing rise to power of a man called Joash, sometimes called Jehoash, as he was mentored and fathered by this godly priest in Israel, or in Judah, should we say, the southern kingdom, named Jehoiada. So Jehoiada was an incredible man, and he took this young boy who was the only royal heir to survive Athaliah's genocide, and helped to hide him. And then when he was 7 years old, then decided it was time now to be rid of Athaliah, and he staged a godly coup to get rid of her, and this boy Joash takes the throne at the age of 7. Of course, when he's that young, he's king just in title. The people around him, including probably foremost Jehoiada, were the people making the decisions in the nation. But as he gets older, we begin to see him taking some leadership of his own, and he begins to clean the temple and cast out all of the debris and the Baal worshipping stuff and all of that. But unfortunately, Joash's reign and future and his testimony are ruined by the test of time. I want to read to you the first 2 verses of 2 Kings chapter 12. And in the 7th year of Jehu, who was king of Israel in the north, Joash became king of Judah in the south. And he reigned 40 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Zibiah of Beersheba. Jehoash did what was right in the sight of the Lord all the days in which Jehoiada the priest instructed him. So I primarily want to address those of you this morning who grew up or are growing up with Christian parents, a very strong Christian influence in your life, something which those of you who do grow up in a Christian home can be tempted to take for granted. And of course, there's another danger which we're going to get to now, which we see in the life of Joash. Joash reigned 40 years. 40 years in Scripture is a time of testing and trial. That's why you see the number 40 come up over and over again. David reigned 40 years, he passed his test. Solomon reigned 40 years, he failed his test. Then we've got the children of Israel wandering in the desert for 40 years. We see Jesus fasting for 40 days and 40 nights. We see Moses up on the mountain getting the law, 40 days, 40 nights. It's a period of testing and trial. And here Joash is reigning 40 years, and we will see what is in his heart. The test is what is in his heart. So the question that this raises with us is, can your faith stand alone when your godly father or mother or godly mentor passes away? Or if you're a Christian, a child of a Christian home, maybe a preacher's kid, when you've grown up in the house of a godly parent, finally when you leave the home and you're no longer under the leadership of your parents, now you've got to go your own way, what happens to you then? This is the test which Joash now faces, because he was raised by this incredibly godly priest Jehoiada, and yet when Jehoiada died, what happened? Joash completely turned his back on God. He in fact murdered Jehoiada's son. When Jehoiada's son Zechariah tried to tell them what they were doing was wrong, because they'd gone back to worshipping the Baals and the idols. Such a sad story, such a sad ending to a boy who had been raised in such a godly household and had been so protected and so well cared for, and had been the recipient of such kindness and grace from this man Jehoiada. And yet as soon as this man is dead, what was in his heart was revealed. And this is, of course, the fear that many kids who grow up in a Christian home, they toe the line while they are in their parents' home. and they look on the outside to be good Christian kids. But take away the influence of their parents, and then let's see what happens. So God saw to it that 2 tests revealed what was in Joash's heart. The first was an attack from enemies, and we read that in verses 17 and 18. Hazael, king of Syria, went up and fought against Gath and took it, and then Hazael set his face to go up to Jerusalem. And Jehoash, king of Judah, took all the sacred things that his fathers, Jehoshaphat and Jehoram and Ahaziah, kings of Judah, had dedicated, and his own sacred things, and all the gold found in the treasuries of the house of the Lord and in the king's house, and he sent them to Hazael, king of Syria. Then he went away from Jerusalem. What's the one thing that Joash does not do? He doesn't seek God. He doesn't ask God for deliverance. He doesn't do what I think his great-grandson, or was it great-great-grandson? Anyway, Hezekiah, in a few generations' time, does when he's facing a similar threat. He goes into the temple. He spreads the letter from Sennacherib, in that case, out, and he cries out to God to deliver them, and God did. So here we see Joash has no faith. He's got no relationship with God. By this time, Jehoiada was dead, and Joash had to stand on his own 2 feet with his own faith, but he couldn't do it in the face of a threat from an enemy. The second test that he faced was not a threat from an enemy, but the soft, smooth, deceptive words of friends. We read this in the account in 2 Chronicles, where when Jehoiada had died, all of the nobles and the elders of Israel came to Joash, and they bowed down before him, and they tempted him away from the Lord to begin worshipping the Baals again. And so these 2 tests that Joash failed on both counts, when he was threatened with an enemy and when he was wooed by friends. And here is the thought I want to leave with you, my friend. If you have grown up with a strong Christian influence in your childhood, that your faith has to be your own. Can the wooing of friends or the threatening of enemies cause you to give up the faith of your childhood? And don't be surprised if God tests you with either one or both of those to see what is in your heart. Your faith must be more than conformity to your parents' will or your parents' expectations. It's got to be your own faith through and through. You've got to have your own relationship with the Lord. And if you find that in truth your faith was never more than just conformity to your parents' will, it was never your own, don't despair. It's not too late. You can still find a faith of your own. But you're going to have to put your confidence in God, not in your parents. Come to God through His Son, Jesus Christ. Ask Him to forgive you and express your faith in Him directly. And then trust in Him in the same way that perhaps you trusted in your godly Father, who maybe you loved very much. But now that He's gone, you can put that same trust, even more so, in the Lord your God. And I encourage you to do so. And before I say, I'll see you tomorrow, another thought came to mind. If you do that, if you've got a Christian parent or both parents who have passed away, and you realize that actually your faith was never your own but theirs, and you now want to find a faith of your own, and you call on God through His Son Jesus, let me tell you what will happen. Your parents are rejoicing in heaven. It is this very moment that they have prayed for, that they did pray for all the years they were on this earth. And you will rejoice to see them again after you die. Well, I pray that that'll be the case for you all. See you tomorrow.